We go across the day.
Just two questions. First one, back to soulmates again.
Yeah.
Would there be, say, a small list of telltales, I guess, as to meeting your soulmate? I know we can ask God, but I'm not exactly getting clear answers at the moment.
So you want telltales? Okay.
Well, I think I know
Who your
telltales,
soulmate is?
but I guess a little bit of reassurance maybe.
You want to be told yes or no?
No. I don't know. That'll be too easy, I think. But
Yeah.
That's how God feels about it too.
yeah.
God's very keen on you discovering your soulmate for a lot of reasons. You know, obviously, the soulmate is the other half of yourself, and so God's very keen to lead you to the other half of yourself. And however, in terms of telling a person their soulmate or telltale signs that somebody is a soulmate, it is far better to do this instead. Here's you, and in your case, you've got male body, so there's your male body. Your soulmate is obviously, what's the gender you're attracted to primarily?
Female.
So your soulmate is obviously a woman, so it's a female, and so there's her body, spirit body, there's her, somewhere in the universe. Yes? How do you get her? How do you get connected with her is the question really, isn't it? Now, somebody coming along and telling you, oh, that person's your soulmate, isn't really going to establish any connection, even if that person does know. And there are many people, spirits in the spirit world in particular, who do know who your soulmate is. But if they told you, it wouldn't help you, right? What's going to help you is two primary things. Firstly, connect truly with yourself. This person, to have a relationship with you, is going to have to connect to you. You're going to have to know yourself pretty well if that's going to ever happen. So you're going to have to be connected to you. That means you're going to have to be connected to your desires. You're going to have to be connected to your longings. You're going to have to know yourself. You're going to have to know your errors. You're going to have to heal yourself to know these things. Focus on that, number one. So connecting to yourself and your desires. Now remember, it's not just your errors you want to connect to, because the errors eventually will disappear. You've got to connect to your desires, because your desires are your true self, particularly, and I'm saying here, your desires that are harmonious with love are your true self. So if you're passionate about playing music, for example, connect with that desire more fully, right? Because that's a part of your true nature. Don't expect anybody else to do it for you. You connect to it more fully. If you're an artist, do the same. If you're whatever it is you're passionate about. If you're passionate about maths, connect to maths more fully. You know what I mean? That's part of the desire. If you're passionate about science, connect to science more fully. These particular things will cause you to have a stronger connection with yourself. When you have a stronger connection with yourself, you are now open to connecting to the other half of yourself. And you're actually helping the other half of yourself recognise you. Because if you're just in a facade, how can they recognise you? They can't. When they see you, they'll walk past you in the street, go, oh yeah, another guy, oh yeah, Dave's pretty good looking, there's another good looking guy, and might feel a little bit of interest, but there's no real connection because they don't see the real you. They only see the facade, they only see the outward form. Soulmate relationship is about soul, your feelings in the soul. Now, if you do that, and the second thing you need to do, so that's number one, and number two is remove intergender barriers, which are all emotional. So, how do you feel about your mum? How do you feel about your dad? How things happen as a child? How much do you want your mum to look after you? How much do you want your dad to look after you? These are all things that you need to allow yourselves to remove from yourself, because if you keep them inside of yourself, you will have these barriers with the other half of yourself, particularly because the other half of yourself is a female. You will have those barriers. But even if you were in the same gender attraction, you'll still have barriers if you don't remove the intergender emotional barriers that you have. So look at your addictions with people of specific gender. So what are your addictions to men? What are your addictions to women? Your addictions to men, in your case, will tell you all of the things you don't necessarily like about yourself or that you need from men that you're not willing to give yourself. And your addictions to women will tell you all the things you don't like about women or all the things you think you need from women, right? And they need to be removed from yourself. Now, as you do that, you automatically become more and more and more and more open inside of your soul to the other half of yourself. No matter what condition she is in, you will become more and more and more open. And you'll get to the point where you'll recognise her and know her. You'll draw her into your life if you haven't already. You'll recognise her and she might not even recognise you at that point. And because you've healed a lot of these problems, you'll be able to still recognise her and engage her in a similar process without pushing her in that process. Does that make sense? Now, a lot of people want to know who their soulmate is so that they can avoid those two particular processes. Does that make sense?
That's why God doesn't send you a telegram, because he wants you just to do those things.
Yeah, I understand. I guess just with my sort of situation, I think I've already, like I was talking about yesterday, had met my soulmate.
Yeah.
And there was just a lot of things that sort of happened during that time that really sort of made me look back and go, Jesus, I think... Oh, sorry.
That's okay. You can use my name as a swear, that's fine.
That maybe that's actually what it was, because a lot of the females I had in my life before that met my addictions very well.
Yeah.
I was, quite sexually promiscuous and everything like that.
Yeah.
Found myself in a relationship where I just could have complete changes really in a lot of ways. Like,
Yep.
I felt that I knew that person
Yeah.
from the minute that we sort of met, really.
Yep.
And it was just, I kind of tried to pull myself away from it because I just come out of a big relationship.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go back into another one, but I found myself that I couldn't. It was just an almost impossibility to walk away.
There's only three options as to why we're drawn. One option is that we're in addiction still, and they have very compatible addictions, so that's one option. The second option is that we are being influenced by spirits who are overcloaking each of us, who want us to have a relationship. That's the second option. And the third option is that we're soulmates. Does that make sense? So it's one of those three options, and we need to be in a position to be able to know which one. The only way we're going to get in a position to know which one is by doing these things. Now, in the spirit world, it's rare for people to actually recognise their soulmates until they're in the fifth dimension, till they're in the fifth sphere of their progression. And the reason why it's in the fourth sphere of your progression that you finish up removing a lot of the intergender emotional injuries that you carry from Earth. And as a result of that, you then can start to recognise your soulmate after that time. Now, for me, that took me nearly 8 years of emotional work to get to the point where I could actually recognise my soulmate. So 8 years of a single life, right? And that's what it took me to recognise my soulmate. And I feel a lot of people who say they know who their soulmate is still really don't know who their soulmate is many times, and because they're yet to go through this work. They're yet to connect with their true passions and desires, and they're yet to deal with their intergender emotional injuries. If you look at your general life, you can see that your relationships with men and your relationships with women are confronting. And for most people that's the case. And these are great. This is a great confrontation because what it does is it causes you to work through these issues. If you embrace the process in a loving way, you'll work through the issues. So my suggestion is we do want to attract our soulmates. A soulmate relationship is the only forever-based relationship we're ever going to have, aside from our relationship with God. Right? And for that reason, it's a very important relationship. It also is a great relationship in terms of fully embracing yourself, because the other half of yourself is a part of who you are, and it teaches you a lot in this process. It's a fantastic process that God has created. The key is to not be impatient with it. and then to start wanting spirits to tell you who your soulmate is and all these kind of things. Because what happens then is they'll start telling you things that are not true, many of them, and you'll get misled down this track rather than dealing with the real issues. So my suggestion always when it comes to soulmates is deal with the real issues. Now, many times in our travels we see soulmates because you get to a point in your own development where you can feel certain people are soulmates for certain. However, when those people come up and ask, are we soulmates or is that person my soulmate, we generally will say, what do you feel? You know, what have you dealt with these particular issues? Because many times we see that people haven't dealt with these issues and they do have an underlying suspicion of who their soulmate is, but if you don't deal with those issues, it's going to be very, very hard for you to maintain a relationship once you meet anyway, without dealing with these issues. Yep.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be in my case,
Yep.
for sure, because it was impossible to maintain the relationship.
Yeah.
But even if it's not, you know, I was still at that idea that those were the things that I'd need to be really working on.
Yeah, so focus on those things. Work, and in particular, if your mum and dad are alive, engage the process of sorting through the issues that you have with them. And many people are not aware of their codependent addictions they have with their parents, and we need to work through them to break down the barriers between ourselves and our other half. Yep. Whether our other half is of the same gender or not. Yep.
Following on from some of the soul mate and soul separation questions.
Yes.
If say a soul's chosen to incarnate into a body,
Yeah.
and half of it's going somewhere, when and where does the other half go? How does that? Is it all, linear in time? Is it at the same time? I mean, time and it's different here to in other.
I understand the question. Yep.
dimensions. Yeah.
So here's the soul before it incarnates. When it incarnates into the two halves. The process of it incarnating into the two halves is going to be, there'll be one half of the soul that incarnates first. It'll usually be a half of the soul that is more what you would call investigative in its nature. So part of the personality gets split as well, and the part that's more investigative in its nature will probably incarnate first. The other half will just follow around that half on the earth plane until it then has a very strong desire to incarnate as well, and it will just follow around the other half until nearby there is a couple who are having sex who draw this soul to them. And it has to match personality. There are a lot of laws involved. It has to match personality requirements that will trigger the emotions, the unhealed emotions and the desires of the parents. And so it has to match a lot of the parents' emotions and everything in terms of triggering them and affecting them. But it's actually, there's a lot of laws involved, but rather than going into each individual law, it just follows the half of the soul around that's incarnated already until it finds an appropriate receptacle to incarnate to, and then it does. And usually that happens within a few years. In extreme cases, it might happen within 20 years of each other. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.